Directly above their lethal payloads of highly intelligent naval mines, dozens of colossal, multi-million-dollar oil tankers are frantically churning the sea, executing desperate emergency U-turns to flee the Strait of Hormuz. Why are the captains of these massive vessels abandoning the lifeblood artery of the global economy? Because an Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander just hijacked International Maritime Channel 16, explicitly declaring the world's most critical waterway closed and openly mocking the President of the United States as some idiot over the open airwaves. This unprecedented geopolitical humiliation comes mere hours after the White House fabricated a grandiose narrative of total victory, falsely boasting to the globe that the vital strait was completely reopened and secured. Welcome to the spectacular real-time collapse of American deterrence, where empty political tweets are brutally crushed by the cold, unforgiving reality of asymmetric military supremacy. To truly comprehend the sheer, staggering magnitude of this geopolitical whiplash, we must forensically dissect the catastrophic sequence of events that just unfolded across the Middle East. This morning, the global financial markets were temporarily manipulated into a massive, artificial sigh of relief. Donald Trump took to social media, furiously posting dozens of times that a historic deal had been struck. He boldly proclaimed that the Strait of Hormuz was completely open and ready for business, declaring it a great and brilliant day for the world. Nearly 36 massive commercial ships, including vessels declaring Chinese, Indian, and French ownership, made a frantic, hopeful break for the strait, desperately attempting to finally exit the Persian Gulf. The captains and corporate masters of these multi-million-dollar vessels had read Donald Trump's celebratory posts and made the catastrophic mistake of genuinely believing that the President of the United States was in actual control of the geopolitical environment. But the sovereign nation of Iran immediately recognized the extreme weakness and profound strategic incoherence of the American position. The Iranian leadership had explicitly stated they were reopening the strait strictly on the condition that the United States immediately ceases its aggressive naval blockade. Donald Trump, trapped in his own echo chamber of grandiose posturing, attempted to have his geopolitical cake and eat it too. He publicly demanded the strait be open to the world while explicitly insisting the American naval blockade would remain in full force and effect specifically against Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran instantly retaliated by strangling the global economy, forcing those dozens of commercial vessels into an abrupt, humiliating mass turnaround. The immediate tactical result on the open water is a scene of unprecedented, panicked maritime chaos. You can actively watch the live marine traffic satellite data. You can see the icons of these massive ships hitting a specific, invisible line in the water, the threshold of Iranian control, and immediately swerving away. They are turning around at the very last possible moment because the Iranian military forces are explicitly ordering them to retreat. The mechanism of this Iranian control is utterly humiliating for the United States military apparatus to endure. Audio recordings strictly confirm that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a very high-frequency broadcast directly to all commercial shipping traffic on Channel 16, the international maritime distress and calling frequency. The Iranian transmission cut through the static, delivering a chilling reality check in broken but unmistakable English. In Persian Gulf and Oman, this is Iranian Stefan calling on Channel 16. Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The broadcast continued, delivering a fatal blow to the American narrative. We will open it by the order of our leader, Imam High, not by the tweets of some idiot. Let those exact words sink into the historical record of this catastrophic administration. The military forces of a regional adversary are actively, openly mocking the commander-in-chief over international distress channels, explicitly stating that Donald Trump possesses absolutely zero authority over this critical geographic choke point. The broadcast laid down the absolute law of the sea. If you want to pass through the strait, you must explicitly ask permission from the Iranians. Let us be unequivocally clear about the reality of the geopolitical landscape. Donald Trump just fully surrendered to Iran, handing the Islamic Republic absolute and undisputed control over the Strait of Hormuz. The terms of this surrender are staggering, fundamentally altering the security architecture of the Middle East. According to Iranian state-run media and high-level officials, passage through the strait is practically highly limited and strictly contingent upon Iranian authorization on an excruciating tanker-by-tanker basis. Only commercial vessels are permitted, while any military ships or cargo linked to hostile countries are entirely banned. Furthermore, these passing commercial vessels will be strictly required to pay Iran direct financial tolls for security provision. The physical transit route has been dictated by Tehran. Entry must be from the north of Larak Island and exit from the south, effectively transferring the Strait of Hormuz directly into Iran's sovereign territorial waters forever. Adding ultimate insult to this historic injury, Axios is reporting that the United States is actually contemplating giving Iran $20 billion in cash. In exchange for this astronomical payout, Iran is merely agreeing to a voluntary system where they will supposedly stop enriching uranium to weapons grade. This pathetic arrangement completely abandons the strict multilateral agreements and real, enforceable controls of the past in favor of a hollow system where Iran simply makes voluntary disclosures. As geopolitical analyst Danny Citrinowicz accurately assessed, Iran came out of this conflict with the absolute upper hand, forcefully demonstrating its total ability to threaten and control the strait while completely refusing to yield to United States demands. Iran is actively imposing strict terms of surrender directly onto the United States of America. To understand why the United States capitulated so spectacularly, we must brutally analyze the cold, unforgiving mathematics of the military reality on the ground. The American military apparatus is completely paralyzed, entirely unable to enforce Washington's geopolitical dictates. The fundamental challenge lies in the geography of the Strait of Hormuz, which inherently renders the American Navy's most sophisticated deepwater capabilities functionally irrelevant. The navigable shipping channels are a mere 3 kilometers wide, and the average water depth is only 30 meters. The United States simply cannot fit an Ohio-class submarine, which is 170 meters long and displaces 18,000 tons of water, into a channel that shallow. Attempting to maneuver America's most powerful undersea platforms in this environment is the precise operational equivalent of trying to thread a massive rhinoceros through the eye of a needle. Meanwhile, Iran has spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. Their fleet of Ghadir-class submarines is only 29 meters long, displacing just 150 tons, making them perfectly designed to silently navigate these shallow channels. When a Ghadir submarine settles onto the seabed and completely shuts down its engines, its acoustic signature is easily masked by the constant ambient noise generated by the dozens of commercial vessels transiting directly above. They become utterly invisible to the most sophisticated sonar systems on Earth. These tiny submarines carry a lethal payload of 4 to 8 highly intelligent naval mines per mission, specifically the Maham 3 and Maham 7 variants. These advanced weapons can be explicitly programmed to distinguish between military warships and commercial tankers, selectively detonating against American naval vessels while intentionally allowing civilian shipping to pass safely. The Pentagon has already desperately confirmed that at least a dozen of these deadly mines have been deployed in the strait, successfully holding the global economy hostage. Washington arrogantly announced Operation Mysterious Fury, publicly claiming American forces had successfully destroyed 11 Iranian submarines. But America's European allies privately mocked this operation, derisively calling it Mysterious Flight because they rapidly withdrew their own military involvement upon realizing the danger. The stark reality is profoundly embarrassing. American forces managed to destroy a few larger, noisier Russian-made Kilo-class submarines and the coastal Fateh-class, but they could not find a single one of the shallow-water Ghadir submarines that pose the actual existential threat. You can only destroy what you can clearly find, and the submarines that actually matter remain completely undetected. Recognizing this suicide mission, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Spain have all outright declined to participate in any naval operation aimed at forcefully reopening the strait. The German defense minister publicly and bluntly stated that Europe will not send its frigates into the strait to do what the immensely powerful American Navy apparently cannot do for itself. If the naval option is paralyzed, the ground option is an absolute physical impossibility. As combat veteran Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis explicitly explained, a ground invasion of Iran has zero chance of success. The United States simply does not have the physical capacity. A credible invasion force would require 400,000 to 500,000 total troops just to mount a possibility of taking the capital. Furthermore, the massive mountain ranges on the entire western part of the country make it as close to a physical impossibility as you can get for an invading army. Even attempting an incursion from the eastern side would force American troops through highly constricted terrain, turning the advance into a lethal shooting gallery where Iranian forces would dominate the high ground. Any temporary tactical success, such as taking Karg Island, would merely breed a catastrophic strategic failure, bleeding American forces dry over territory they could never hold long-term. The United States and Israel were also comprehensively defeated in the air, broken by the sheer volume of asymmetric warfare. The instrument that forced the Israel Defense Forces to transmit an emergency request for an immediate cessation of hostilities was the unyielding mathematics of a perfectly executed saturation strike. Iran launched 450 Shahab-3 ballistic missiles from its territory in intricately synchronized salvos, while Hezbollah forces simultaneously unleashed an apocalyptic barrage of 2,500 rockets and precision munitions from Lebanese soil. This coordinated multi-front assault deliberately overwhelmed the intercept assignment capacity of absolutely every defense battery in the coverage zone. Iran did not fire its arsenal sequentially. They fired in devastating, coordinated salvos of 15 to 20 missiles targeted against specific Israeli military installations within highly compressed 90-second windows. These missiles, equipped with separating re-entry vehicles that actively maneuver in the terminal phase of flight, fundamentally complicated the intercept geometry for Israeli defense systems. Against this volume arriving from 3 different approach vectors simultaneously, a single arrow, 3 battery mathematically cannot engage all incoming threats. Iran calculated the exact leakage rate for every single system and guaranteed destruction. The staggering Hezbollah barrage was meticulously composed to financially and operationally bleed the Iron Dome dry. Short-range Katyusha rockets, costing a mere $300 to produce, serve strictly as cheap interceptor consumers against Israeli Tamir interceptors that cost a staggering $50,000 each. This represents a financial hemorrhage that absolutely no defense budget on Earth can sustain indefinitely. While the Iron Dome was completely consumed by the sheer volume of cheap rockets, precision-guided Fateh 110 missiles were explicitly reserved to target the Israeli defense battery positions themselves. The defense system is quite literally destroyed by the very act of defending. Furthermore, Iran deployed vicious cluster munition warheads, which comprised approximately 50% of their ballistic missile deployments, deliberately targeting airfield surfaces and open storage areas. As Dr. Uzi Rubin, the former director of Israel's Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, formally explained, after the cluster is opened, it is too late. One single missile suddenly becomes 80 separate descending targets spread across a massive 10-kilometer dispersal radius. No defense system currently deployed anywhere on Earth has the simultaneous tracking capacity to address that apocalyptic volume. Electronic warfare warheads were simultaneously detonated to completely blind Israeli radar installations with electromagnetic pulses. By the time the Israel Defense Forces transmitted their ceasefire request under extreme duress, Arrow 3 batteries had exhausted approximately 70% of their interceptor inventory, and the military had concluded that continued organized resistance was simply no longer operationally viable. Because of this colossal, undeniable military failure, the global economic devastation is already rippling through international markets with terrifying speed. Brent crude oil has skyrocketed past $110 per barrel, with some analysts predicting it will reach $150 if the closure holds. American motorists are suffering immense financial pain, paying gas prices of over $7 a gallon. The International Energy Agency, whose entire existence is dedicated to stabilizing global oil markets, was frantically forced to release a record 400 million barrels of emergency crude reserves just to momentarily slow the massive economic bleeding. But the economic horror is far deeper and vastly more permanent than just skyrocketing gasoline prices. The global economy is staring directly down the barrel of a severe depression. As experts have grimly noted, a global recession is likely already fully baked in due to the compounding effects on energy and fertilizers. The fertilizer supply chain has been critically crippled. Farmers globally, including in the United States, Asia, and Australia, are currently planting with significantly less fertilizer at much higher costs. This guarantees catastrophic agricultural scarcity and massive food security impacts during the fall harvest that will mercilessly last deep into the next year. Even if the Strait of Hormuz completely opened today, it would take many months to restart the flow of tankers, especially since 5 of the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council countries had to greatly suspend their physical oil production because they completely ran out of storage space. As the legendary geopolitical analyst, Professor John Mearsheimer, correctly points out, President Trump is deeply trapped in a catastrophic lose-lose situation. If he attempts to stubbornly continue this unwinnable war, he absolutely cannot win it, and he will guarantee that the international economy falls completely off a cliff, triggering a worldwide depression. If he officially accepts this humiliating ceasefire and makes these unprecedented major concessions to the Iranians, he permanently destroys his own political legacy and irreversibly damages American global standing. Mearsheimer emphasizes that Trump made a colossal blunder by entering this war against Iran, foolishly believing he would secure a quick and decisive victory. The ultimate, undisputed victors of this spectacular American failure are Russia and China. Because the global economy is desperate for oil to survive the crisis, the United States was humiliatingly forced to take economic sanctions off Iranian and Russian oil, actively enriching the very adversaries Washington sought to isolate. Furthermore, the vital flow of American weapons to Ukraine is drastically slowing down because the United States must aggressively divert its depleted weapons stockpiles to support a battered Israel. For Vladimir Putin, this strategic distraction is absolute manna from heaven. Simultaneously, China reaps incredible, generation-defining strategic benefits. The United States had previously adopted a grand strategy to pivot to Asia to firmly contain Chinese expansionism. Now Washington is forcefully pivoting away from Asia, stripping critically important military forces from places like South Korea and Japan to desperately plug the bleeding wounds in the Middle East. This chaotic abandonment severely damages American relations with its Asian allies, who now gravely doubt America's reliability in the face of the China threat, while allowing Beijing's vast influence in the greater Middle East to grow exponentially. The diplomatic foundation of the United States-Israeli relationship has also suffered permanent historic damage. It is now widely understood in the United States that aggressive lobbying pushed America to enter this losing war against Iran. Because of this stark failure, the discourse regarding Israel has changed drastically, and the Israel lobby's position inside the United States will be severely damaged for decades to come. Israel itself stands profoundly diminished, having essentially lost the war alongside the United States, with Hezbollah successfully rebuilding its arsenal and firing rockets deep into northern Israel, while Israeli ground forces struggle immensely in southern Lebanon. The grand illusion of perpetual Western dominance has violently, irreversibly shattered. The Strait of Hormuz is firmly, permanently controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, European economies are staring down total paralysis, and the invincible American military has been effectively neutralized by shallow-water submarines and cheap ballistic missiles. The President of the United States is desperately tweeting fabricated victories and bizarrely claiming we will sweep up nuclear dust, while multi-trillion-dollar shipping fleets execute panicked U-turns in the dark, contested waters of the Persian Gulf. The military alliances that define the 20th century are actively fracturing under the weight of American arrogance, and the geopolitical axis of Russia and China is rapidly, methodically dictating the new world order. We are no longer transitioning into a multipolar world. We have violently crashed into it, and the American empire is bleeding out on the geopolitical chessboard. Do not listen to the sanitized political theater or the empty declarations of victory. Watch the brutal, unforgiving movements of the global military and economic landscape. Stay highly vigilant, stay fully informed, and thoroughly prepare for the immense economic and geopolitical shockwaves that are actively tearing our world apart.